Here is my audience. We decided to do the speech outside today. Without answering out loud, do you think that African Americans are treated fairly by the law enforcement? The answer to that question is no. Why might you ask? First, not all African Americans are treated unfairly by the law enforcement. I believe I am credible because my grandfather was a sheriff, which is part of the law enforcement. And whether African Americans are treated fairly or unfairly is a problem that has been put on the back burner. The media only shows you what they want you to see. They want you to think that they're getting treated fairly, or another media source might want you to think that they're getting treated unfairly. And it has become a big problem due to cameras on phones that don't show the events leading up to a misunderstanding. Today, I will talk to you about why African Americans are not treated fairly by law enforcement. This includes profiling them in such ways as their attire or clothing, their body language and language, their verbal language, and also attitude. We all remember the Trayvon Martin shooting. According to the Daily Beast, Trayvon Martin was used as an example for profiling based on his attire. Trayvon Martin was walking down the street, minding his own business. He was wearing a hoodie and jeans. There are many stereotypes created based on what a person is wearing. Because of these stereotypes, Trayvon Martin, an innocent adolescent, was shot. It is our instinct as humans that when we see someone with a hoodie, saggy pants, to feel fear. I believe that when a police officer profiles African Americans based on what they wear and how they will treat them. For example, I believe that if an African American was well dressed in a suit, was to get pulled over, the police officer would have more respect for him just because he was dressed in a suit. The National Public Radio states that 31% of African Americans avoid calling the police when in need because they have a fear of being discriminated. Prison Policy Initiative states that it is a proven fact that police officers treat African Americans with less respect than whites. Next, I will talk about the body language of African Americans. Body language is a powerful indicator of a person's emotions and social interactions. It is a way of non-communication. According to Cultural Conflict, many body gestures like your facial expression, your eye gestures, how you greet people are often used in one's culture and can be interpreted in many different ways. The way an African American walks can say a lot about where they come from. Often at times, if a police officer sees an African American walking down the street and they have a kind of a lean in their walk, they would assume something like they're in a gang. Lastly, I would talk about the attitude and verbal language of African Americans. The source states that the sound of your voice may determine if you get that apartment or not. The same goes with your tone. This can be applied to profiling based on attitude and verbal language. The sound of your voice can determine if you get that ticket or not. In conclusion, it is evident that African Americans are profiled by police officers based on the way they dress, the way they move, the way they make gestures, and the way they talk.